Let's go. We are live. Good morning. Good morning. I am back. It is 11 a.m. Tuesday, 10th of January. It is day 2 of This is Burnout. And I am joined by the fabulous one and only Debra Corey. Hey, Debra.
Hi there.
You okay?
Yeah, doing really well. I was just telling you when we were signing in, a bit nervous. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm ready to go. You need to
Yes,
sometimes throw yourself into the uncomfortable.
you do.
Probably
And
not a
I
good burnout conversation.
good burnout conversation, yeah.
Yeah.
But I genuinely appreciate and I do think potentially Deborah and I are going to be talking for about 45 minutes, the same as I have been doing with other guests. But Deborah and I today are talking about bad bosses. I'm going to ask Deborah in a moment to introduce herself. But what I do want to say is Deborah had sent me a message. So when I did the book launch in July, Deborah was there. So for my book, Mind the Gap, which is a story of burnout, breakthrough and beyond, Deborah had attended that and I'd spoken about this campaign back then. And Deborah messaged me immediately to say, I'd love to get involved to talk about 2 aspects. And one of those aspects was Deborah's experience of working with a bad boss that almost got her to the point of burnout. And secondly, then how Deborah felt that she had been a bad boss that had potentially got somebody to the point of burnout. And so I think for Deborah to be here, vulnerability, courage, and all, I just want to say a huge thank you because, I haven't got reams of managers this week that are saying, hey, I was a bad boss and this is what I did. But Deborah and I do have our matching props. Whoop, whoop.
Click.
So, if you haven't read it, and the other side, mine's all covered in lipstick actually, but this was all this was a gift from Glenn and Deborah when they did the launch of Build It, which is a Rebel playbook. If you haven't read it, do. But this is really what we're talking about today. We're talking bad bosses. And I think for Deborah to be open to having a conversation about actually what she didn't get right at a particular point and the impact that potentially had on somebody else, for me, I just think shows enormous courage in order to be able to do that. So before we've even started, I want to say thank you for being prepared to be as open, and let's see where the conversation goes. So before we get into all of those things, just give us a bit of an intro about you. Like, who is Debra and what do you do?
So you mentioned the book. So like you, I do write books. So I've been an HR person for 20, 30 years. And I've sort of stepped out of it over the last couple of years to focus more on my mission of paying it forward. So doing things like writing books. I'm now up to 5 books, doing consulting, workshops, everything and anything to pay it forward and to encourage people to join what I call the revolution. So challenging what you're all about, Kelly, absolutely. Challenging the status quo. And I thought this concept of paying it forward really fit today because, as you said, this isn't something I would normally talk about, put myself out there, vulnerabilities, but I think it's important because I'm sure there's other people out there who might listen to this and think, do you know what? I either might have done that before, or I might be starting to do this, or you know what? I'm glad I know this so that I don't do this. So I'm hoping it will help other managers.
Absolutely. And I'm absolutely sure it will. And even if another manager doesn't recognize some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, I think it's also helpful for those that may have managers that are displaying whatever it is that we're going to talk about. I don't know the detail. We haven't talked about any of the detail yet. So, I'm like, what we're going to be talking about. But I think even if you are recognizing some of what Deborah is saying, in your own manager and thinking, okay, this is either making me feel uncomfortable or this is how it's making me feel. And actually, I thought I was the problem or whatever it is that we need to go. Hopefully, as we kind of go through this session, we can also maybe encourage or include some kind of hints and tips of things that you could be doing to have different conversations with your boss or to take action to help yourself or any of those sorts of things. As I said, I don't know the details. We haven't talked about that. Deborah just said, this is what I want to come talk about. And I said, yes, okay. So as part of this revolution and paying it all forward, we're going to have just a great chat. I know we are. So shall we start with your experience with your bad boss?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I hadn't really told the story before until the book that you mentioned, the book I wrote with Glenn. And we were doing the chapter on management, and we were talking about, what needs to change when it comes to our leaders in management and their styles and their skills. And I told him the story, which I'll tell you in a minute. And as I was telling the story, I made the comment about, managers don't just impact and ruin your life at work. You take it home and it can ruin your life at home. I said, bad bosses can ruin lives. And for those of you who are listening to the tape, you didn't see, but Kelly and I both have mugs. So I've got a t-shirt, I've got mugs, and it's this whole concept of what a manager and a boss can do to you. So my story, here it is. I'm going to start with what happened to me, right? Is that where we go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I had a boss at a company that I absolutely loved. Loved the company, loved the people, loved the job. Everything was amazing. And it was amazing for my first year. I had picked up and moved my family for this job. I had taken my kids out of a school that they loved and the friends that they loved. So, I really invested in this new company. My husband at the time was a stay-at-home dad because we had adopted the kids, and we had made a commitment when we adopted that, one person would stay at home and take care of them. So, we all have this pressure of a job. I just felt this huge pressure that I had to, do the best that I could do. And my boss was wonderful for the first year, an amazing person, learned so much from this person, really pushed and challenged me. But we used to make a joke about how there were 3 of us reporting into this person. And we used to make a joke about each week that it would alternate, and one of us would be the person who would really be pushed and challenged to the brink. But, you can handle it for a week because you knew it was going to go to somebody else. And then unfortunately, one of the people became like the favorite. This happens sometimes with kids. I don't know, it's a favorite child. And then the other person fell pregnant. So all of a sudden, 100% of the wrath was sent to me. And I didn't realize it actually until afterwards, why am I being picked on all the time type of thing. And it was one of those situations where nothing I could do was right. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting to be yelled at either in person or in front of people. It was just so challenging. And, similar to your other guests and you, Kelly, I'm a tough person. I was a competitive gymnast. You fall off the beam, you get back on the beam. And absolutely. And it just kept happening and happening. And we'll talk about signs. I did not see the signs at all. And I can remember, this is the last part of the story. I can remember that the only way I could deal with my young kids and my husband was that I'd walk home, say hello, and then walk around the block and say, oh, I just need to walk around the block for a little bit. And it would, that way I would try to just separate and get rid of everything that I was feeling. And one day my daughter, who must have only been 8, chased me down the road and started walking with me and saw me crying and talking to myself and all the things that you do. And it was that aha moment, like, mommy, what's wrong? And just trying to explain to her in terms that she would understand, you know how you get when you have friends and it's not working out. And she knew my boss. She loved my boss. I said, it's just not working out. And, I explained a little of it, but she was 8. And she goes, mommy, why don't you leave? And I just looked at her. I'm like, do you know what? I think you're right. And it was so scary because, I was the one with the job. Also, the other thing I didn't mention is I had shares that I was pretty sure I was going to get a big payout in another year. So, this would pay for my kids to, be able to go to school and all these things. So, but it took my 8-year-old daughter for me to realize, do you know what? Why am I doing this? And what am I role modeling to my children? What am I doing to myself? But what am I role modeling to my children? And I walked in the next day and resigned.
Thank you for sharing. And again, I think I can relate to, I think definitely with a kid thing, and I mentioned it yesterday, and it's in my book, it's everywhere that I've spoken about. But it was my 12-year-old son saying to me, like, Mum, your job is killing you. That made me realize that something needed to change, right? And so whether they're 8, whether they're 12, seemingly whatever age they are, right, when our kids can see, and I suppose it is, right, it's the obvious thing, and yet I think for us, because we cloud it with the responsibility, right? And again, you and I I think similar from that perspective. You know, my husband was working. I was the main breadwinner. I was on the bigger salary. I would have lost the bonus. I had the status, the job, the responsibility. You know, I had all of that kind of stuff. And so I think when we cloud all of that, yeah, my gut should have said leave. My gut was saying leave. But my head was saying, you've got all of this responsibility. You've got this, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. And so all of those reasons became the reason that I stayed. Whereas my health hadn't even featured, right? I wasn't featuring my health or the impact it was having on me. It was all of these other, you know, financial reasons, everything else. And yet my sons were like, Mum, your job is killing you. It was like, crap. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So you resigned the following day. Was there a conversation at that point about why you were resigning, or was it just okay, resignation accepted, off you go?
It was starting to go downhill anyway. So to be honest, I think that my boss was actually relieved, like, because I'm a fighter and she didn't want to fight. I think she wanted it to just end. And I wasn't going to let that happen. So yeah, I don't think it was a surprise. Interesting though, about a year later, I went and spoke to my boss when I was, we moved again, and then I went back to visit, and I thought, you know what, I need to have that conversation that I should have had back then, but I wasn't brave enough to have. And it's another reason why I'm passionate about it. And my boss didn't realize all the things that were going on in my mind. I didn't realize all the things that were going on in their mind. So, you know, I genuinely feel that it was me, but it was also the boss. And I think you both have a role to play. I think, you know, sometimes with bosses, we think it's just them, but sometimes we need to be brave and let them know that, because I genuinely believe that maybe a few people wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be a bad boss today and I'm going to ruin someone's life. I really do not think that happens. And when we go into the impact that I had on people's lives, I never knew it. I really did not know the impact that I was having on my people, because, you know, if I can hide it, anybody can hide it. And unfortunately, I think that's what's happening. But the last thing I wanted to say about impact, because you mentioned your kids as well, is, you know, again, it doesn't just impact us, it impacts everyone around us at work who has to deal with us, and it impacts our kids. And again, what are we showing our kids in these situations? You know, we think we're showing them the right things like perseverance, but actually vulnerability and honesty and knowing when it's the right time to walk away. And when they got older, I actually explained the financial aspect of it, walking away from money. And once they finished giving me a hard time about, Mom, they actually realized it. And I'm hoping as adults now, you know, they'll be brave enough to do what I didn't have the courage to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I suppose there's a lot there for me. I think there's going back and having that conversation with your books. Again, I know a big thing for you is about communication, right? Let's have these open, honest conversations. Let's kind of talk about everything that we do. Did that feel like I don't know, did it, so you said it felt like you needed to have the conversation. Why do you think it was important for you to have that conversation at that time?
So I think in thinking it through, and I was so busy blaming my boss and everything for it, I didn't have the conversation in the time. And I wish. And I felt that, you know, as I was starting to grow as a manager and realize my impact, I wanted them to understand their impact so that it didn't happen to someone else. And I genuinely believe, you know, I'm all about doing those types of things. You know, I'm the person in the back of the room who raises my hand and says the things. Unfortunately, my daughter's like that too. She gets in trouble all the time in school because she defends other people when she thinks her teachers, you know, are being unkind. So I don't know if I'm role modeling the right behaviors with her, but I just felt that she needed to know that. My boss needed to know that, so that my boss could do something about it. And what was lovely is that my boss did want to do something about it. And again, I never shared it.
Thank you. And you said about kind of some of the sites. So your daughter had caught you walking along the street, talking to yourself in tears, right? How long had that been going on for you before you were approached by your daughter that day?
Oh, probably months. And when I was thinking about it and preparing for this interview, there were other signs that I didn't see. I mean, I can remember like it was yesterday being in a global HR meeting, 30, 40 people in the room, and my boss said something that just was a bit cutting. And I had to leave the room in tears. And I remember just like having to do that quite often, just breaking, just crying, which is not what I'm all about. And I didn't realize that. I felt like I was always on the verge of tears. And I should have seen that. I should have seen that as a sign. Absolutely. It's, when there's something that's happening that's not part of who you are, we all cry from time to time, but the feeling of always wanting to break into tears, and the feeling I mentioned before about always looking over my shoulder. I completely lost my confidence, completely. I mean, so much so that my next job, I didn't look at the company. I looked for the best boss for me. And my next boss was just what I needed. She was kind, she was nurturing, but she kept telling me, stop looking over your shoulder. I'm not going to sabotage you. So, I don't know if you've talked about it with other people, but, burnout and all of the things that caused my mini burnout. It wasn't a big burnout like what, you spoke about in some of your other guests, but it lingers. It went with me probably to my next 2 jobs, just to get over it. Because I'm like, yeah.
And I think that's something definitely worth talking about, because I think we assume for a lot of us, once we're out of that situation, particularly when we talk, when it's looked at workplace stress, right? The World Health Organization, their definition of burnout is chronic workplace stress. So I think sometimes the misconception is we just take yourself out of that situation and therefore you'll be absolutely fine. But as you've said there, and as I know a lot of my clients who have moved from an internal role into another internal role, some of the ongoing coaching that I'm having with them in their new roles is because their managers are saying to them, right, you've got all of this responsibility, or you've got all of this autonomy, or I trust you, I'm trusting you to do this. You've got it, like you need to now be trusting yourself. And they're like, but I just, because of what my last boss did or what my last organization did, the impact that had on me, like, I don't know how to necessarily make those decisions anymore. I don't know how to have the confidence to make that decision or to move that forward. And so that's where, some of the work that we're doing is, but I think it is important to talk about that, right? You don't just leave one place and kind of revert back to happy, confident, able person, do you? To kind of go back in. So you said your next 2 roles before that kind of confidence is picked up. So over what time period was that for you?
That was probably a couple of years, but that's because I didn't have a Kelly in my life. And I think that, you need to talk it through. I mean, it's so obvious, again, I was a gymnast. You injure yourself, you go into rehab, you build your body back up, whatever part you injured, and then you go back on the balance beam, then you go back. Yeah. Whereas, myself and probably others, you're right, we just jump right back into the next thing. And although, I made the conscious decision of making sure that my manager was the right manager at that time. And she absolutely was. I mean, I don't know what I would have done. She really helped, she was my counselor, I guess. She helped build me up. But again, it was just bizarre. I just expected myself just to bounce right back and go back to the person I was before it all happened, because I had been that person much longer than I was this insecure. I wasn't confident in myself. That, me, that's just not me. So yeah, took a little while.
Yeah. And it is. And I get, I think for anybody that knows Debra, right? Debra is like firecracker, right? Can stand on stage in front of tens of thousands of people, command an audience, like say it how it is, do what needs to be said. So yeah, I don't think I could imagine not a Debra.
She's my alter personality, so Debbie. So I was Debbie for a little while. My husband always makes fun of it. I've got Debbie and Debra.
So the overly confident person. But yeah, it's so interesting. So you said there was so what other signs might there have been? So there was definitely this kind of this always wanting to be crying. Were there other signs that you were either ignoring or didn't even know that they were signs in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, things like, again, going back to that meeting that I talked about, normally, you know, I want to go and join in all the fun, and I would keep to myself. I didn't want to be around people because I didn't want the triggers. I didn't want anyone to ask me about what was going on. There was one other person who knew what was going on with me, and I hid it from everyone else. So yeah, it just changed my interactions with people. You know, even at home, it impacted my interactions with people. Unfortunately, it didn't help that at the time my husband's mother was very unwell and lived in another country, so I couldn't talk to him either. So I really was, you know, nobody to talk to. And again, that was an aha for me. I should have gone to somebody to help me do it. I mean, good on my boss though. My boss at the beginning, when things started going bad, did have me speak to someone through the company.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But the problem with that is I didn't 100% trust it.
Yeah.
So I didn't completely open up, and, you know, it was good. I was glad that they did it. But back then I wasn't sure that I trusted it. Now I completely understand the mental health support processes that happen in companies and how they are 100% confidential. But at the time, it wasn't something that I was as familiar with as I am now.
Yeah. But again, I think even though pretty much every organization at the moment, right, will have some kind of employee assistance program or some kind of mental health support or some kind of counseling or support, but I'm sure there are still people out there that if it was offered to them would still think this is not confidential. I don't trust the business. I don't trust, don't trust the conversations that I can have. There are probably still people that are doubting whether that is, I mean, if not that it is a comparison, but if we talk about like engagement surveys, right? How many people still do not believe when it says confidential? How many people do still not believe that they are able to speak confidentially and put whatever it is that they need on that? And I think it plays out in so many different ways across organizations. I think when you get to that point of, not being able to trust or relate to your manager, if there is bullying, if you're getting to that point of burnout, if your stress is rising, that lack of trust in and out of the business can just increase dramatically, can't it?
Yeah, but the one thing I would say, because since then I have managed employee assistance programs, and I can tell you hand on heart, the only reports I get are numbers. I don't get anything specific whatsoever. So if there's anyone listening who thinks, oh, I'm not sure about it, I have seen these reports. I know nothing at all.
Yeah. Thank you. Hopefully that will provide some reassurance to some people. So thank you. That's all been really useful. And again, I think lots of people will be able to relate to that. So let's turn it around then. And for you as a boss, I suppose before we go into all of the detail, and again, I have no idea what it is that you're going to share with us. And I really want to pinpoint this. I say this a lot all the time as well. I genuinely do not believe that anybody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to be a bad boss, or today I'm going to give the worst customer service that I possibly can do, or today I'm going to really go and bully that person and make their life hell. I genuinely do not believe that anybody intentionally wakes up with that. But we know that things in our personal lives may impact how we're interacting or any of those sorts of things. For the situation with you and your boss, so had the situation that you experienced with a bad boss happened before the situation where you were a boss?
After. It happened after.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's part of when I realized it, when it was happening to me, when it happened to me, which is why I'm absolutely passionate about any time in any situation at work or at home to put myself in the other person's shoes. Because I think if I had been in my employee's shoes and understood what they were going through, it would have made a huge difference.
Okay. So over to you then, Deborah. So the times that you were a bad boss, talk to us about that.
Yeah. I mean, I have to, again, if I'm being completely honest, I have to admit that throughout my career, I've been a mini bad boss all along, partly because in my career back in the US, I was that's just how you manage. You know, you just said it as it is. You were tough, you know, all the things that we talk about now. That was not what my role modeling was all about. Also being a very competitive person, being a very, you know, not that everybody doesn't work hard work, but I sometimes take it to the next extreme. I didn't understand that not everybody was like that. So to some extent, I'm sure I was a mini bad boss all along in my career. But I think the one that really was the one I feel horrible about, and the one that I would love to go back and change, is when it got to the point where somebody went out on stress. And it was somebody who, I have to be honest, shouldn't have been in the job. I inherited the person. They were in a job. The best thing I should have done, and I've done this since, is to find them another job. Because all they were doing was just, it was a job too big for them. And as much as I wanted to help them, it wasn't getting any better. So they had that. Plus they had Debra just pushing them and pushing them and pushing them, because that's just how I am. And everyone else on my team was fine with it. But it was this one person who, from a skill perspective, also from a personality perspective, and that's why I'm absolutely passionate about these personality tests and learning our personality styles, and, you know, ones where you can learn if the person's this way, this is how you can support them, this is how you can develop them. And I didn't know any of that then, and I was just treating this one person the same as everyone else. And it just got to the point where she went out on stress, and I just felt horrible, absolutely horrible. And similar with me, like, I wish I had seen the signs. I wish she had spoken to me, all those types of things. And, you know, at the time, I thought, well, why isn't she talking to me? And then it happened to me. I'm like, now I know why she didn't talk to me. So, yeah, that's not a good feeling, having somebody in that situation.
And do you think, so you said in terms of treating her the same. So you know that I'm very, very passionate about the fact there is no one size fits all, right? And yet,
where were you back then? I needed you.
I know, where was I?
I needed you.
Where was I back then? I think I was trying to be my own role model of like, this is what needs to happen, and kind of change in the world of work and HR and all of that sort of stuff. But, you know, I do think there is that, because we still see and I've seen, I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think Michelle Hartley's posted on her LinkedIn this morning about like 5 HR trends for this, like for 2023. And lo and behold, like leadership and management capability, I think, is like still the number one priority. And I think, like, we say that every year, but we still continue to churn out the same crap when it comes to leadership and management development, right? Here is your checklist. Here is what it looks like to be a manager. Tick off these things, and you will automatically be, you know, the best manager, the best boss, right? We spend billions of pounds on leadership and management development every year, assuming that it is this generic one size fits all approach. And I know when I started my management career, I started management training, and we still had like, treat your people how you would want to be treated. And I look at it now and it's like, no, we get people how they want to be treated. Yes. And yet that was the mantra, right? If you were a good boss, if you treated people how you wanted to be treated. And I look now at some of the leadership and management that, I mean, not even just at the early stages of my in-house career, but even towards the end, we are not really taught and trained how to have those sorts of conversations, right? This is how you treat your team. This is how you run the agendas. This is how you do your one-to-ones. But we don't really get taught what to do if somebody is severely struggling in that situation. 9 times out, you know, you might speak to HR, but a lot of management training, a lot of leadership training still really doesn't dig into who am I at my core, who are you at your core, and how can we work together to ensure that we both get the best out of each other, right? That doesn't form part of training.
Yeah, it's interesting because oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, Debra, you go.
No, I was just going to say, it's funny because I just wrote a book that came out in October, which is on appreciation, and it's for managers. Because I think the problem is that, you know, we've got all these great tools out there to show appreciation, and we make mistakes because we don't focus on the feeling. How do you want to be appreciated? Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, one person did a great job. I called them on stage. I had the whole audience applaud for them. Someone else, that would be punishment.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do is I wanted to help managers, to your point, understand that, you need to understand what they've done, and you need to understand how to show them that feeling, that appreciation in a way that will resonate. And you're right, that's where I went wrong, because I don't feel so bad now, because you're right. We were all trained to treat everybody the same, because if you don't treat everyone the same,
yeah,
then it's favoritism and all of that. And throw that out.
Yeah. And again, coming to your point about appreciate them. So I've my partner and I've got 4 sons between us. I've got 22-year-old twins. I've got 19-year-old stepson and a 12-year-old stepson. The eldest of my 2 is an engineer in the Navy. So if we look at the kind of, I suppose, the second and third sons out of the 4, even in terms of how, from an appreciation perspective, how they're very different. So my son had got lots of benefits and rewards and bonuses and stuff before Christmas that he wasn't expecting to get. But he also, as he's kind of telling me this, and he was kind of planning for his Christmas party and doing all this stuff, he'd also, like, their company magazine, he had like a full page in the company magazine, like showcasing how awesome he was, and this kind of interview and all of this sort of stuff. Didn't tell me about the magazine until it just kind of came up, and I was like, where's my copy, right? I want to see my son in this full page magazine thing. He's like, no, it's no big deal, but it was nice to have. Whereas my oldest stepson has been nominated for 2 awards in the role that he's in terms of the stuff that he does, like these kind of employee awards. He could not be more embarrassed, or I want to say kind of ungrateful. And he, like, why are people doing this to me? I don't care. I just want to do my job. I don't want this. I don't want this. He's being invited to these kind of like awards. He's like, I'm not going. Like, it's not the sort of thing I want to do. Whereas I think, actually, if my son got invited to stand on, like, I don't know, a full magazine about him, he might be even more grateful about it. And so again, I think understanding the differences with our people. You mentioned personality profiles there. They can be, when used in the right way, they can be an absolutely amazing tool if used in the right way. We'll caveat it with that.
Yeah.
But coming back to then to your point and the manager in this perspective. So the person goes off sick. What then happens? You said that you felt awful. Was that something that kind of triggered immediately for you, or what was that kind of thought process? What was happening?
Well, again, I'm going to be embarrassed to say it. My first feeling was I failed. Okay. And then my second feeling was, oh my gosh, what did I do to her? I was probably I was very hard on myself for it. Because I thought, what did I do wrong? And again, I didn't ask for help. I didn't go to somebody. And that's another thing I'm really passionate about. As a manager, yes, you have an impact. Sometimes things are outside of your control and you're going to have somebody. So it wasn't just me. It was other things going on in her life. But you need to get them support, but you also need to get yourself support, because there were things that I was doing wrong that if I had spoken to someone, I could have stopped. I thought what I was doing was right. So as I could see the signs of her struggling and everything, because it didn't just happen. It was, it built up to that. But everything I did when now that I've learned more about it, it's like, oh my gosh, no wonder she got to that stage, because everything I thought was helping was actually adding more fire, or, fuel to the fire type of thing. And I wish I had gone to somebody to get some help to do it better. Hi there. I'm not sure if I'm on or if Kelly's on, but I I think I might be here by myself. So I guess I'll just keep talking. And if you can't hear me, then you're listening to Kelly. I was just starting to talk about how I has as a manager needed support because what I was doing was not necessarily working. It was throwing fuel into the fire, and it was possibly making the situation worse. So, if you're a manager and that happens, I guess my suggestion to you is to get help. If you're the employee, then what can you do to make sure that your manager knows that what you're doing actually isn't working? I think can make a difference. I think, a theme that I seem to be saying over and over again is just go out there and find the right people to support you and to support your people over and over again. As far as I know, the next question that Kelly was going to ask me is, what did I learn from this situation, both being a bad boss and having someone who was a bad boss to me? It goes back to what both Kelly and I were talking about earlier about this concept of understanding impact. So understand the impact that you as a manager have on your people, and really to take it seriously and to have a pulse. Hi, Kelly. Hi there. You there?
Hey, sorry about that. The joys.
That's
of
okay. I was just gabbing away.
But you're a pro, right? You just carried on talking.
I was just starting because I know you're going to be winding it down, and I was just starting to talk about lessons. So I'll leave that with you to jump into that. I didn't realize that I was by myself for a while, so apologies. There'll be silence for a little bit.
No, that's fine. Right. Well, you keep talking about the lessons because I still don't think I've still got a bit of an issue at my end. So if you can hear me now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Debra's going to talk about lessons, and then I may just jump in a minute. There we go. Seamless.
Perfect. I was talking about impact and the concept of the impact, because that was really my aha, is the impact that you have on your people, and just even little things. I remember once I talked about Debbie and Debra. So Debbie is actually my evil twin. Debra's my nice person. And I realized the impact that when Debbie comes out, she can have on others. And, we're all human. Our alter egos we're going to have bad days. She's going to come out. So this is back when I had an office, and I used to put a sign on that says, Debbie's in today, or something like that, so that people would understand okay, is it worth it, or should I actually wait till Debra's back in the next hour or something like that? But even just little things, and just, being honest with your people about, what you're going through, what your mood is, and things like that. So you don't have these negative impacts. With this person that I caused the situation with, if I had spoken more about, do you feel comfortable in this job? What can I do to make you feel more comfortable? What can I do to support you? What are the things happening outside of the job that are making it harder for you? I think that would have made a big difference. My other lesson is about being brave, which you'd think of all people that, I talk about being brave and being a rebel. I should have been more brave, and I should have understood that actually my boss would have appreciated me talking to them. And I thought that they didn't want to hear from me. So I wish I had been a bit more brave when it comes to that. And then the last thing, I think we've lost Kelly again. I think the last thing is to utilize all the resources that I have in my company, and to find out what the resources are, because there's amazing people in HR right now, people that Kelly's coaching, who are putting in these great programs to support people and to support managers, and that we should know what they are and we should use them. That's what they're there for, to help us.
Thank you. Debra, if there's one big takeaway, so you've talked about some of the lessons there, but if there's one big takeaway that managers could take away to ensure that they are not causing burnout for their people, what would the number one thing be?
I would probably say communication. So two-way communication. So listen to your people, as you talked about before. Know your people. My husband and I both work from home quite often, and I hear him on his one-to-ones. And the very first question he asks his people, every single one-to-one, is, tell me about how you are right now. you know, what kind of place are you in? How are you feeling? Those types of things. So to listen to your people, and then on the flip side, be open and honest with them, and tell them, you know, you don't have to be perfect. Tell them more about you. Let them get to know you. You know, if my people knew that I was this competitive gymnast, when I give them a hard time, they'll be like, oh, that's the gymnast again talking to me, or something like that. So yeah, it's that two-way communications is so, so important. I think we've lost Kelly again. So that's really my story. Again, I wanted to show it both ways, both how bad bosses can ruin lives, how it's done it for me, and also the impact that I've had. I hope that that you find it helpful. I think the last question that Kelly asked the other people is, how can people talk to you or learn more about you? So by all means, you know, connect with me on LinkedIn if there's anything that you want to talk about. I've got a website where actually I did write a Bad Bosses Ruin Lives blog. I've got blogs and such, which is www.debcohr.com. So I hope you find that helpful. And thank you, everyone. I'm going to end this and enjoy the rest of the sessions. They're fantastic. Take care.
Hello, hello. I think I'm back, but now I think I've lost Debra. I'm not sure if this is a StreamYard issue or not. Hopefully Debra will come back just so I can say thank you. But hopefully you got everything that you needed out of that session. And again, I want to say, if we're not going to get her back before then, I think for anybody to come onto a live and admit that they have been a bad boss, right? Debra and I kind of showed our matching mugs at the beginning of this session. Bad bosses ruin lives was a premise of what Debra and Glenn Elliott had written in the book Build It. And that was really kind of, I wasn't expecting us to have that conversation today. And as I said, I had no idea where Debra was going to, where the conversation was going to go. We haven't talked about the detail. But I think for any manager to be able to come onto to any platform and say, I have been a bad boss, I think is something that we need to be rewarding, right? We need to be, and I think encouraging other managers and other leaders to say, I have not been a great manager, I've not been a great boss in this situation. I think we tend to hide a lot of this stuff, and it is having an impact on all of our people. So I think we absolutely need to be aware of that as we go. I want to apologize for the tech issues during this session. I don't know if it's my end or the system or whatever is happening, but hopefully I can get that fixed before 1 p.m. when I come back with you for another interview with Morgan Gleave is my 1 o'clock guest. We're going to be talking about his experience of burnout, what he's up to now. We're going to be talking about the signs of burnout, the impact that it had on him. If you've got questions for any of these lives, please feel free to drop them in the comments. If you're seeing any of these videos, if you're seeing anything that you're finding helpful, please continue to share with the hashtag This Is Burnout. Debra is not here for me to be able to say thank you to. So please, if you have been watching either live or on the replay, give Debra a tag for me just to say thank you very much. I'll get hold of her as soon as I hang up from here. But yeah, any comments, anything, please tag Debra for this conversation. So at Debra Corey, I think on Twitter she's still at Debra Corey Rebel or at Debra Rebel. But you can find details of Debra. I think she is debracorey.com. I've been asking all of the guests to share their details, and I'm sure she is at debracorey.com. I will confirm that once I have double checked. So yeah, if you want to find out about Debra, is doing some really amazing work. All 5 of her books have been really well received, and I know are helping lots and lots of people in lots of different organizations. So do have a look at those. Again, I want to say a huge thank you to Debra for being open enough to talk about being a bad boss. Perhaps if we had more bosses realizing that bad bosses ruin lives and asking for the help that they need to be better, then again, potentially we could be eliminating burnout from our organizations. For now, I'm going to say thank you very much for sticking with us. Sorry again for the tech issues during this session. I'm going to do what I can to get that resolved. Huge thank you to Debra for being so open and so honest in this conversation. I will be back with you all at 1 p.m. speaking to Morgan Gleave. I will see you then. Take care for now, everybody.